questions? Yes, Larry.
Path unions.
Yes.
How many unions have settled? How many are left to reach contracts?
Michael, you have the exact number?
I don't have it in front of me, but I believe you have a piece of paper that.
Well, so let's go big picture. There are 23 unions at the Port Authority, including the PATH unions. 12 we reached settlement with and were ratified a year ago. That we have been at the bargaining table with the PATH unions. 2 of those unions have we reached agreement with and have been ratified by their membership. We continue to be at the table with all of the other PATH unions. They're at different stages, but we are committed to keep going until we reach agreement with all of them.
Are we close to an impasse? You know, union folks, that's how they described it to us, that negotiations were at an impasse, and then they wanted to request a presidential emergency board be formed.
We do not believe we're at an impasse, and we're making, the progress varies between the unions, but we're making steady progress, and that's not an impasse.
I mean, 90% of the 5,400 represented employees are now under contract, and they were not under contract, 2 years ago, a year ago, and that and those contracts were out of date between 6 and 12 years. A lot of progress, but we have a lot of work to do. I'm looking forward to getting it done. Yes, sir.
On the Hudson Tunnel, which the Port Authority is currently the sponsor, a question for the chairman and then a separate question for Mr. Rick Cotton. The Port Authority is going to be the sponsor until the Gateway Commission is set up. Under law in both states, the Gateway Commission can't be set up until the state Senate confirms the 2 nominees. Governor Murphy submitted these names in October. It expired. He's resubmitted the names. There's been no movement. They're not even scheduled to the Senate Judiciary Committee. So a question for the chairman, are you talking to your former colleagues to encourage them to get the commission set up? And then I had a question for Rich. You want to answer that first before I ask his?
So the question is, am I talking to my former colleagues? I am
encouraging them to.
Yes. So to answer your question, I talked to my former colleagues quite a bit. With Senator Weinberg Sunday, whether it was yesterday with Senator Sweeney, I deal with 12, 15 of the senators any given week on issues. And those conversations, respectfully, is a private conversation. We talk about a lot of things, many related to the Port Authority and how they can help. And they talk to me about concerns that they have. I also talk to the Speaker and a number of the Assembly members that I've served with and who continue to serve in the Assembly. Very productive conversations. We're hopeful to continue moving the ball forward.
On the establishment of the commission.
When I left the Senate, I just left the Senate. So I no longer pretended to be the Assemblyman for 11 years or the Senator. I respect that new folks have taken over those jobs. So if they ask me my opinion, I share that opinion with them, having served in the legislature for 22 years. I do that freely, but I also have an opportunity to speak to them about what their actions could do to help promote the well-being of the Port Authority, and have done that.
And then, Rick, Tuesday you were very vocal. You were on television crying the alarm bell on the tunnel. The tunnel could fail at any minute. Do you believe that racking can be achieved? Jan O'Lieber says racking is going to be used on the Amtrak's tunnels on the East River. Should there be a study? And the other part of it is, we had a letter in the Daily News last week from the head of the FTA, Jane Williams, and she wrote, despite direction from Washington on how to fix the tunnel application, the project sponsors continue to ignore those suggestions. Your folks say, we've answered all of them. The people in Washington said, there's too many questions outstanding. Why can't you just clear the air and release all the communications back and forth, and the public and the press can decide, is the problem at the Port Authority? Is the problem in Washington? Because they say they gave you a list of things to do, you didn't do them. You're saying you did everything asked, so shouldn't the public be able to see where the dispute lies? And I'd also like to get your view on racking, and is Jan O'Lieber wrong? And is Governor Cuomo wrong?
And that was one question?
It is, as you say, the most urgent, biggest project in America, $30 billion, so I guess it's a big question.
Well, let's take a step back, first of all, in terms of what you asked the chairman. the states have made crystal clear that they are committing the authority, policymaking, et cetera, to the Gateway Development Now Corporation, soon to be the Gateway Development Commission. The Gateway Development Corporation is functioning. Development Commission, which will be eligible to receive federal funds, is awaiting the confirmation of the New Jersey Senate. So the GDC is alive and well in terms of policymaking, in terms of responding. You saw, I assume, statement of the chairman of the GDC, Steve Cohen. I might say I'm not aware of being on television, but I did issue a statement which criticized the continued delay at the federal level. Now, my understanding, this is based on a telephone call from the FTA, was number one, they have improved their rating of the justification for and the importance of the tunnel. They have moved it from a previous low rating to a medium-high rating in terms of justification, on the project justification. What they have, and they have also changed their opinion, apparently, in terms of the use by the states of federal low-interest loan programs for the financing of the local share. So that's progress. They're focused on a criticism on the financing side, where they have given it a low rating, as I understand it, for two reasons. One is that absolute dollar amount is too high. Well, this is a big project. That's the reason the request has gone to the federal government, because it's a big project, it's a national project, and it is perfectly appropriate for the federal government to provide 50%, half of the financing for it. It's an expensive project. We have actually lowered, the GDC has lowered the cost estimate. That was one of the criticisms. There's a direct response to that. The issue they have raised is the commitment of the locals to provide the financing. The Port Authority board has passed a resolution authorizing, put it in the capital plan, specifically authorized funding to support $2.7 billion of construction costs. Each of the states has committed funding to get to fully half of the cost, the projected cost now of the tunnel. So the unwillingness of the federal government to take yes for an answer is the problem that we currently have.
And on racking?
Well, racking is being looked at by the GDC, and I don't want to speak for them. It is a partnership, but it is under consideration.
Yes, Paul.
Questions for Rick about JFK. I was just wondering if I'm right, the T4 agreement is the last of all of the agreements that the Port's been negotiating over the last few years. So I was just wondering, A, how significant is that for the whole airport-wide redevelopment? And B, given the on-again, off-again struggles you've had at LaGuardia, what concerns, if any, do you have about this massive redevelopment that you're going to perform at JFK?
Well, I think LaGuardia is a pretty good example of making progress. There's no question that when you rebuild an entire airport and keep it operating, not merely at previous levels, but at record levels, there are periods of time when it is inconvenient. And we have apologized repeatedly for that. We've asked for people's patience with that. But the project at LaGuardia is making significant progress. It will take significant strides forward in terms of this year. The Kennedy project is a massive project. It's intended to transform that airport from where it receives very low marks in virtually every passenger survey that gets taken, to turning it into a 21st century airport that meets best-in-class global standards, and that's our commitment. So there are 4 different aspects of the project, and the Terminal 4 commitment, $3.8 billion private investment, is the 4th project, a 4th element of the transformation project, and it represents a major, major advance in putting all aspects of the transformation project moving forward. So it is a major step. There's no question.
Yes, sir.
Back to the tunnel just for a second. Racking has been looked at, it's being looked at for a while. I was looking at my notes months ago, months and months. When is a decision going to be made on that? Is there any way to say? And is there any reluctance at all that if that were to go ahead, that the FTA might say, well, okay, you guys are all set then, you don't need a new tunnel?
Well, it is being looked at very carefully. These serious engineering studies of complicated questions related to a key transportation link on which hundreds of thousands, literally hundreds of thousands of commuters and Amtrak passengers depend each day, need to be made carefully. And so GDC has that work underway. I wouldn't speak for them in terms of when that's going to be completed, but all aspects, all alternatives are being examined.
Yes.
Can we get an update on the Port Authority bus terminal and where that is? I mean, the last I'm really thinking is that we had the scoping document with 3 proposals, and that was gonna be submitted to feds, I think. Anyway, just wanted an update on where that project stands.
So what happened last June was that we published, the Port Authority published an initial scoping document which described 3 alternatives that are currently under consideration. 120-day comment period, multiple responses, multiple inputs in terms of reaction to that scoping document. The comments on it are very substantive and very important. And that has prompted us to take a very close look at the alternatives, to consider the comments that we have received both from the public, from elected officials in both New York and New Jersey, from multiple government agencies. And where we are now is that we are looking extremely carefully at those comments. We are actively looking at the alternatives and considering alternatives and amended aspects of what had been put forward. We regard this as an extremely serious set of comments, and we are committed to move forward as quickly as we can, but we're going to do it in close consultation with both the New York community, the New Jersey commuter community, and that process is in full swing, and we are pushing it as fast as we can. But again, with a project of this scale, we are taking the comments extremely seriously and giving them extremely serious consideration.
So can you maybe just say too, then what is the next step that people can sink
Well,
their teeth into on this?
Well, the next step will be the issuance of the final scoping document, and we anticipate it will narrow down the alternatives. I don't want to characterize it until the analysis is done, but the next step will definitively be the issuance of the final scoping document, which will be the Port Authority's recommendation as to which alternatives ought to be analyzed in detail in the environmental impact statement, which is when the feds will take over.
Do you know when that?
When it's ready.
Yes,
Paul.
Paul.
The decision to make the general counsel the acting IG, was that an executive decision? And is there a conflict of interest with general counsel kind of acting in the 2 roles?
So to answer your last question, is there a conflict? No. We have sought outside legal counsel, in this particular case from a former federal judge who has some expertise, have been issued an opinion. There is absolutely no conflict to having our general counsel serve as the interim inspector general.
And was there a reason why it wasn't possible to take somebody, within the office just in an acting capacity?
Yeah, there's a lot there. There was a number of, I think, 4 retirements all at once, left a huge vacuum of leadership. Extraordinary events occurred within 2 and 3 weeks that required some very fast decisions being made by the executive director in consult with the audit committee, and consult with me and the vice chair and the board members. An extraordinary January brought us to this place.
And do you anticipate filling the role soon?
I think what we anticipate is having a serious look at the operations, getting some understanding as to what the needs are. I think we're going to, without forecasting too much, probably engage in a national search to find the right candidate or candidates that will be interviewed, and hopefully as quickly as possible. But like I said, we had 4 retirees in a very short period of senior management with, probably over 100 years of experience there that left a huge void.
I would just reinforce the fact that we're going to approach this the way we have approached virtually every other portion of the agency, which is benchmarking against best practice elsewhere. This office was set up 20 or 30 years ago, and what we want to look at is other IG operations, understand how they operate, what is best practice today, and then, as the chairman says, we intend to launch a national search. We will go through a brief competitive process to work with a specific outside search firm, which can then reach out nationally to secure candidates.
It's a top priority, Paul. Thank you. And yes,
Yeah, sorry, just one last thing. The Bayonne ferry, where will that terminate in the city? Or is there an idea of where the stops will be? I just know that it leaves from Bayonne, but then where does it?
Well, the city is obtaining both the contract with the ferry operator, and then the city will operate and maintain, and I assume it will seek a contract for an operator of the ferry terminal. I'm actually not certain of what they intend with the ferry operator in terms of what the terminus across the river will be.
yes, Michael.
For Rick, would you like to respond to Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez on access to LaGuardia? And then she's not wholly happy with the current AirTrain plan. And a much easier question on LaGuardia. Today, the Port Authority announced through the President's Day weekend, the Q70 bus, there'll be no fare. Every holiday, the fare is dropped. Wouldn't it simply just be easier to just keep the fare off all the time on that bus? Because whether you build the AirTrain or not, it's going to take a while, and just make it easier for ground transportation.
Well, let me say, the Congresswoman wrote to the FAA asking for further information. So I think we should wait until she gets the information that she requests. I've been quite outspoken in terms of the 2 points. One is that the alignment that we have recommended is by far the best available option, and we've also been very clear on what we think the problems are with alternatives. So I think we should wait until she gets the information that's requested from the FAA. On the bus, actually, we'll take a look at that. I think the
Every holiday, Arbor Day, you
We-
take off the fare.
the reason that we do it is because of the persuasive voice that we have heard from one of the eminent newspapers in New York City.
But in terms of just keeping it off all the time. I mean,
We're
we're trying to encourage people to get out of their cars, right?
I think it's a good point.
Yeah, we'll take
It's
a
good
look,
point.
we'll take a look at it.
Anyone else? All right, thank you all.